9:31, and Kevin Landers, welcome in. So,
Good morning.
We are continuing to dive into the story that keeps on giving, the Strauss scandal and the Ohio State University. So yesterday, we got this settlement. So Ohio State University decided to settle with 279 of the 280 remaining cases.
Yeah.
A total of $100 million involved in this. Talk to us a little about where that settlement, what is this settlement doing?
Okay, so we'll break down. It's a settlement in principle.
Mm-hmm.
So what does that mean? That basically means that both sides have agreed to this $100 million figure. So it wasn't a take it or leave it, right? So they needed both sides to agree on it. So that's where we are. What this means is that the cases aren't technically dismissed until the disbursement of the money is given to each survivor, and then that person is taken off the list. So it's dismissed one by one. So it's basically, in principle, yes, but it's not technically dismissed until they actually get their money. The next question is, how did they get their money? Traditionally, it's a third-party company that will determine how much each survivor gets based on whatever calculation they determine, and that's how it's divvied up. And so until that happens, they won't get their money. Now, they'll have to pay their attorney's fees out of that settlement money, and then whatever's left, they'll divide that up individually. So it's basically an end to this case in a nutshell. That's basically what it does.
Isn't there one case, there's one plaintiff that still has something pending?
Right, and I talked to OSU yesterday, and they told me that it was a plaintiff whose name has not been publicly released. It's not someone who's come before the media before.
Okay.
Someone we wouldn't know.
So we know, was it last week or the week before, that the university had moved to have a large chunk of these cases tossed out. What does that do to those? Because they were arguing this 1984 law that, those before this law went into effect, well, they can't be part of this because, well, it wasn't a law then. I guess basically that's off the table now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's off the table. And so basically, the other part of this, which is sort of interesting, is that John Zeiger, the head of the Board of Trustees, his term ends. It ended yesterday. So the timing is a little unusual that this settlement is happening at the time his term is ending. His term actually ended, I think, in May. So he carried on another month. He was appointed by Governor Kasich. So I reached out to the governor's office yesterday to find out, well, what's the next step? What's the timing of who is going to be appointed? It is an appointed position by the governor, who will be the next president of the board, and they don't have a time frame yet. So we're still waiting to see who the next board president will be.
Okay, so with that, with that vacancy there, waiting for that appointment, does that slow down this process?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so. I didn't get an indication that was an issue from OSU yesterday when I spoke to them. It seems like now it's sort of in the hands of the person who's going to divvy up this money. And I think, the bottom line is, and I think most people would agree, that no amount of money is ever going to bring peace to these people who went through this. And I think that's I think people should be aware that these people suffered for decades. And the investigation by Ohio State even confirmed that they knew this was happening. They did nothing to stop it. And now this is the end. This is where we are now.
I want to play a soundbite from one of the survivors. I felt like he summed it all up really well.
And to know that no matter how big they are and how small you are, they were Goliath, we were David, but we had our slingshot, and you know what? We took our shot and we won.
Yeah.
Stephen Snyder-Hill, yeah, one of the long time,
When did you first meet him?
I think when this first broke, several years ago, he was one of the non-athletes who came out and said, this was happening, and it's credit to them for keeping it alive. It hasn't obviously been very pleasant for them to come forward, and now we're just a week or 2 weeks ago we learned there were other people we never knew. Chief Happ, Chief Happ from the fire department, Tim Becker from the police department, non-athletes who one was in high school, one was at OSU, who later came out and said they were victimized by Dr. Strauss. And I think this is it's a dark chapter for Ohio State.
And to know that.
And so I think it's one of those things where hopefully this will bring some kind of healing to the survivors. But I think the question is, we've seen it before at Michigan State, at Michigan. We've seen other sexual assaults happen over time. And obviously, it takes a long time for people to come forward. And when they do, they shed this huge light on this problem. And I think this is a wake up call for all universities.
Yeah.
Because I mean,
Take it seriously.
this was 20 years, 1978 to 1998, and then this all, I mean, didn't come to light until about 8 years ago. 2018 was about 2018, 2019
Yeah.
was when formal things started coming to light.
Right. So as of April 15th, they've settled with 317 survivors, and Ohio State has paid a little more than $61 million. So this is close to about $200 million in the end of the day.
It's a lot of money. And like you said, the money isn't what's making it right. So
Yeah, and I think that's I think this is it's I guess for the Ohio State's point of view, by putting this behind them, these survivors can move forward. But I think we may hear more. We could possibly hear more of people who went through this, and they're probably getting a sense of voice because others have come forward.
right.
I thought that Tim Becker, I thought his statement was extremely powerful, that he had just told his wife and his adult children that this had happened to him.
And he choked up when he said that
yeah.
too. I mean, it's still so emotional for them all these years later.
Yeah, sure.
They're still impacted. I'm going to play a soundbite now from our new OSU president, Ravi Balmkanda. This is what he had to say about this coming to an end, basically.
We continue to be very grateful to them for their courage in coming forward. And reaching a final resolution is very important to us and is an important step forward. The survivors of the Strauss abuse are all Buckeyes. Will always be a part of our family and our community.
Okay, and then this was Ohio State University's statement. So this has been a long time. Kevin, do you remember when you first started reporting on this?
It's been, over 10 years.
Yeah.
Over 10 years easily. And, and there was a lot of denial. I think that, you began to see through the testimony of former athletic director, other OSU personnel about what they knew, when they knew. It's too bad that no one came forward.
Right.
In hindsight, different time. You wonder what, during the 70s, when this was happening, in the 80s, what was going on? Why didn't they come forward? Hindsight's always 20/20. But at the end of the day, you have to do the right thing. And why that happened, that's on them to figure out why they didn't come forward, why this was
victims.
kept. By the way, and you talk to the victims who were there. Tim Becker was saying, I was taking a shower and he was always there next to me, and you wonder, who was looking out for their best interests.
Right.
Right, and you read through a lot of those deposition documents, and there's a few in there that it was like people were just like, it was the 80s, we just kind of ignored it, and it's come back to now, really haunt the university.
Yeah.
2
Hopefully
decades
we've learned
later,
from
3 decades later.
hopefully universities have learned from this. If they didn't, shame on them, and they're going to pay the price. But this is about accountability, and this is about truth to power. And listen, Dr. Strauss at the time was a very highly regarded doctor, and a lot of these. Tim Becker even said this, that I didn't think they would take my word over the doctor.
Right, that he was like, I was a young 20, late teens college student. I was a freshman in
doctors
college.
take their Hippocratic oath. They're not supposed to do any harm.
That's right, yeah.
That's literally what they do. So the fact, I understand him having that first feeling about all that.
When Chief Happ, had announced that this had happened to him, part of his reasoning was, if I come forward as somebody who held a position of power in this community, that this even happened to me, that this might help others say that this also happened, and we can start opening up, the more and more layers of this onion of this case start to come open, which we know that is what also drove the former Columbus police officer to, he mentioned that. It is like, once I heard Chief Happ mention that, then that was like, okay, this is my time as well to bring this up.
Yeah, and I think that I was astonished. I always felt when I was talking to them about, imagine holding this secret in for so many decades and not being able to come forward.
It eats you.
Tim Becker felt that, he wondered who I would talk to, who's going to hear me, who do I relate this to? And he was waiting for someone to come forward, and he knew Chief Happ, obviously. When he heard Chief Happ, he's like, oh, there's someone I can finally confide this into, and how did you deal with this, and so forth. And I think that's I thought that was very admirable and strong, and it showed that that how important this is for them to come forward.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Kevin, thank you so much
You're
for
welcome.
coming on today.
You're welcome.